Pleasant weather too into central parts of Europe, but topping and tailing that, looking a bit disturbed. It's wet, it's very wintry down into that southeastern corner. More heavy snow to come into Scandinavia and more specifically, Norway.
Afghanistan is faced with a huge challenge.
Relations have gone really sour between us and our allies.
We have inflicted considerable damage on the enemy.
The people who make international headlines.
Ultimately, the truth will out.
They want to stop this publication of information that embarrasses them.
Make time for Sir David Frost. Frost over the world. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. The top stories here on Al Jazeera. Libyan state television has broadcast an appearance by Muammar Gaddafi. He addressed crowds of supporters in Tripoli's Green Square. Gaddafi's forces have retaken the town of Bin Jawad in the center of the country, but rebel fighters have held positions close to the capital and in cities and towns in the east. Now, several British Special Forces soldiers have been released in eastern Libya. The UK is still insisting that it only had diplomats in the area. Hoda Abdelhamid has been following the story.
It's very difficult for anyone here to believe that these 8 British nationals were actually on a diplomatic mission for the simple reason that they landed in the middle of the night by helicopter in a little town south of Benghazi. They had with them a whole lot of equipment, according to our sources, computers, maps, weapons and explosives. They were immediately intercepted by rebels and the residents of that area and handed over to authorities in Benghazi. Now, the National Council here in Benghazi says it had no idea that these 8 British nationals were on Libyan soil until they were handed over. They said that no one had told them about a diplomatic mission coming into the country.
The way they came in was inappropriate. They came into the country in the wrong way. We arrested them as soon as they touched the Libyan soil. For someone to just come in like that through the air without any permission or prior agreement is out of order. I mean, we have a state and we have a sovereignty. We have sovereignty over our borders, land, air and sea. Anybody who wants to come in must obtain a permission. I mean, how can this be a delegation of diplomats and come in this manner? We completely reject this.
They do raise the question that if they were really a diplomatic mission, why didn't they come through the normal route, and that will be through the Egyptian border with Libya. The National Council did say that at this stage it did not want to have any kind of international diplomatic row, so it handed them over to British authorities as quick as it could.
The unrest in Libya is having an impact around the world. With oil prices rising, the Spanish government is bringing in measures to cut fuel consumption. Sonia Gallego explains.
There's a change of pace happening on highways throughout Spain. Across the country, drivers are being encouraged to ease off the pedal, and it's all in aid of conserving energy. The unrest and uprisings experienced in oil-rich Arab countries have meant a surge in the price of petroleum, spelling trouble for countries dependent on imports.
Well, we are pretty sure, because we have made a lot of studies dealing with this problem, and our conclusion is that we save at least 0.7 liters per 100 kilometers.
Around 80% of the country's energy relies on imported oil and gas. That's a fifth above the average for the entire European Union. So for the next 4 months, the speed limit on Spain's highways goes down from 120 kilometers per hour to 110. That, says the government, will reduce oil imports by 5%, saving the country just over $3 billion.
Well, Libyan oil currently accounts for just over 13% of Spain's demand. And while Spain's oil supplies are in no danger just yet, the reduction in this national speed limit is just one of the ways that the government is trying to get people to cut down on fuel. And that's a scenario that's not been seen in this country since the 1973 oil crisis.
Also approved increased use of biofuels, a modest reduction in train fares and subsidised tyre exchanges. But with a sluggish economy still struggling its way out of the recession, the measure hasn't exactly been welcomed with open arms, with many seeing it as a ploy to distract the country from other problems.
I think that there are more important things that the government should be concerned with, and they shouldn't be wasting people's time and money on this.
It is laughable. It doesn't really contribute anything to the economy in general, if that is what it's about.
While oil prices remain high, the debate goes on over what alternatives there are for Spain's energy consumption. A sign of the times in an increasingly shaky climate. Sonia Gallego, Al Jazeera, Madrid.
The trial of the former French President Jacques Chirac begins on Monday. He's facing charges of corruption which date back to his time as mayor of Paris. Tim Friend has the details.
In typical style, Jacques Chirac always insisted that he wanted to be treated like any other person facing trial. But that's unlikely to happen. The 78-year-old, one of France's longest-serving presidents, seems to grow in popularity with the French public, who view him with a particular fondness, the envy of other politicians. This is despite the fact that he's the first former head of state to face criminal charges since the Fifth Republic was founded half a century ago.
He is a man who sort of does the right thing at critical times. We've seen it politically at other times, like saying that France should not be involved in Iraq. We've seen it at times where he stood up for the rights of Parliament. And we saw it, of course, that he was very unequivocally against the Front National. And, that he stands as a statesman for that, I think, whatever his other faults.
He's now in fragile health. His wife, Bernadette, dismissed reports that he's suffering from Alzheimer's disease, but he may find a court appearance arduous. The abuse of public funds charges spring from his time as mayor of Paris and salaries paid to so-called phantom employees at the town hall. The money was used as part of Chirac's drive for further power in the 1990s, at the end of his 18-year term as mayor.
Well, he finished his term as mayor of Paris in 1995, and after that he won 2 presidential elections in 1995 and in 2002. Now, the French public was very much aware of these very serious allegations against him of corruption, but it's a cultural problem in France. I think the French press is not strong enough. It didn't do a good job of holding him accountable.
A civil action is being settled by repayment of funds. Mr. Chirac lost his legal immunity against criminal charges after he retired. If found guilty, he could face a heavy fine and up to 10 years in prison. But in practice, he would be more likely to receive a small suspended sentence. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera, Paris.
Afghanistan's President Hamid Karzai has rejected a U.S. apology for the killing of 9 Afghan boys in a NATO airstrike